BSI is the UK's national standards body, and we take a really keen interest in how we can use consensus knowledge to accelerate innovation.
BSI is the world's oldest national standards body, and it's fair to say for about the last 100 years now, we've been at the forefront of innovation.
And it's particularly important in the built environment space, where we've seen radical new developments that are transforming the industry, like building information modelling, what we call BIM. These new BIM standards that are coming in today for use in the UK and internationally are really going to be transformational in the way that we deliver infrastructure, buildings and other construction projects.
We've worked with the industry. We've taken the standards that were created by the national standards body. We've worked with the industry, we've worked with key stakeholders, and we've brought together a scheme that reflects not only the best practice that was available in the standard, but also, more importantly, what the industry needed.
We've been working hard with government and their advisors and our industry experts to develop a suite of BIM standards in this case. And they're there to be used. They're freely available, so make use of them, download. But they're basically, this is what good looks like.
Lifetime efficiency is an even bigger cost than the initial construction, so there's no doubt that that too is going to play a major part in our focus in the coming years as we partner with the industry.
It's been absolutely key to the products that we've been developing to support the construction industry globally with implementation of BIM. BIM represents, a real shift in innovation and how construction is undertaken. So it's been very, very important to work with industry to engineer solutions together. Very important when you consider that collaboration really is the foundation for BIM.
It's time to unlock the true potential of BIM with Plannerly. Your plan module provides a simple framework to create BIM execution plans, implementation plans, and contract agreements. Drag and drop from industry templates or copy and paste your own to standardize across your projects. Build your documents together with live editing. Add text, images, tables, videos, or even embed rich content to a section to enhance your plan and drive team engagement. Collaborate with your team to progress each section by commenting, sharing, and publishing content that has been authorized for use. Simple online project planning. And remember, don't plan late, plan early. Plannerly.
BSI is the UK's national standards body, and we take a really keen interest in how we can use consensus knowledge to accelerate innovation.
BSI is the world's oldest national standards body, and it's fair to say for about the last 100 years now, we've been at the forefront of innovation.
And it's particularly important in the built environment space, where we've seen radical new developments that are transforming the industry, like building information modelling, what we call BIM. These new BIM standards that are coming in today for use in the UK and internationally are really going to be transformational in the way that we deliver infrastructure, buildings and other construction projects.
We've worked with the industry. We've taken the standards that were created by the national standards body. We've worked with the industry, we've worked with key stakeholders, and we've brought together a scheme that reflects not only the best practice that was available in the standard, but also, more importantly, what the industry needed.
We've been working hard with government and their advisors and our industry experts to develop a suite of BIM standards in this case. And they're there to be used. They're freely available, so make use of them, download. But they're basically, this is what good looks like.
Lifetime efficiency is an even bigger cost than the initial construction. So there's no doubt that that too is going to play a major part in our focus in the coming years as we partner with the industry.
It's been absolutely key to the products that we've been developing to support the construction industry globally with implementation of BIM. BIM represents, a real shift in innovation and how construction is undertaken. So it's been very, very important to work with industry to engineer solutions together. Very important when you consider that collaboration really is the foundation for BIM.
It's time to unlock the true potential of BIM with Planoly. Your plan module provides a simple framework to create BIM execution plans, implementation plans, and contract agreements. Drag and drop from industry templates or copy and paste your own to standardize across your projects. Build your documents together with live editing. Add text, images, tables, videos, or even embed rich content to a section to enhance your plan and drive team engagement. Collaborate with your team to progress each section by commenting, sharing, and publishing content that has been authorized for use. Simple online project planning. And remember, don't plan late. Plan early. Planoly.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon you. Good morning, good afternoon, selamat siang, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to today's webinar, Weekend BIM Talk 6, Online BIM Protocol and Standard. In this webinar, we will explore more about the roles, functions, and advantage of implementing protocol and standards in the implementation of BIM. This webinar is part of Construction Indonesia and Concrete Show Southeast Asia. Welcome to Mr. Ong and Mr. Awan Lothar. We are already present among us in this webinar. This webinar fully organized by Archilantis along with Pamerindo Indonesia and broadcast via Zoom webinar. We have a few announcements before we begin for general housekeeping. Host will mute your audio and camera. Today's sessions will be recorded and we will share the recorded session 2 days after the webinar. For Q&A session, please use raise hand button. Then the committee will select one of the participants to give their questions directly to the speaker or use Q&A button to type your questions and mention to which speaker your question is for. For attendees who have any questions, we will select the best questions for 10 lucky persons to get discount voucher training from BSI Indonesia and free membership from Archilantis. You can access recorded session, presentation slide, e-certificate 5 until 7 days after the webinar. Please submit your inquiries to ajengpamerindo.com. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue this webinar, let me introduce our moderator for today's webinar, Mr. Harbayu from Archilantis. And for the next, I will hand over this webinar to Mr. Harbayu. Mr. Harbayu, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, on this session topic, we are talking about a BIM protocol and standard. And then we are talking about when effectiveness, efficiency, and lean process are a necessity. And then we are talking about how the monitoring of the implementation of good BIM protocol and standard. And then we are talking about what are the ins and outs of implementing BIM protocol and standard. And also we are talking about how can BIM protocol and standard create a huge rule to make a profit, especially for owners, and how do ISO 19650 as a BIM protocol and standard play a role. And then in this webinar, we will discuss with two persons who are experts in their field. And in the end, we will continue with a question and answer session. We hope that you will always be present until the end of this event. For discussing today, I will introduce our speaker today is Mr. Anwar Lauter and Mr. Wilson Ong. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker for today is Mr. Anwar Lauter. He is information management consultant at Auricon, Australia. He is also a BIM manager. He studied at Master of Building Information Modeling at University of Western. For Mr. Anwar Lauter, please welcome. The time is yours. Sorry, Mr. Anwar, you still mute your microphone.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, good, it's good.
Okay, I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay, hoping everyone can see that. Terima kasih Pak Bayu. Assalamualaikum. Selamat pagi. Apa kabar? Good morning, everyone. So I've been invited this morning to be here by Pak Bayu and Pak Kamal from Archilantis to talk about the ISO. Firstly, I just want to say the honor is mine to be speaking here today. Two very important things in my life. They are BIM and my attachment to Indonesia. So Indonesia is one of the many countries in Southeast Asia growing at the speed of light. So to have a good foundation in construction governance is incredibly important. So as Pak Bayu mentioned, I'm from Auricon. Auricon has become one of the first organizations globally to achieve the BSI Kite Mark certification for BIM for the ISO 19650 Part 1 and Part 2. And we achieved this in August of 2019. I'm pleased to be speaking today with Wilson Ong, who makes up a part of the BSI cohort. So who am I? I work as a BIM consultant at Auricon, primarily in asset management. We take the data first approach very seriously, especially with regards to BIM. The kind of work I do explores things like the data twin, data lakes. Some of you may know it as digital twins. So we worked primarily on engineering projects. Here are some projects we've been involved in Indonesia. Potato Head as a design consultant and multiple processing facilities as engineering consultants.
Mr. Anwar, sorry, can I interrupt a little bit? Your mic is going to turn low.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah,
okay.
It's good. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. So before going on, I just wanted to mention that the following presentation is my opinion only and my personal interpretation of what good looks like within BIM. So take my lessons with a grain of salt. When I was thinking of how best to structure this presentation, I knew there were a few people from Oricon listening in today. Even though we follow the ISO closely, I always get people asking me, what is the ISO? So today I thought I'd talk about the ISO in a way that I wish I'd known when I was starting to learn it, and talk about three main things. What is BIM? What is the ISO? And then we'll summarize all of that. So let's start with, what is BIM? So BIM is not Revit. That is to say that Revit is an authoring tool, and authoring tools make up a part of BIM. Other parts include analysis, 4D, 5D, and data. We consider all of these as enabling softwares that help supplement BIM as a process. If you were to ask me, I believe BIM is the concept that attaches data to 3D objects. This is what differs BIM from CAD. If I could personally summarize what I thought BIM was, I'd say that BIM is data disguised as 3D objects. That's a quick introduction into my opinion of what BIM is. So what is the ISO 19650? I like to look at the ISO as if BIM were a rocket ship with many components. What does every good rocket ship need? A user manual. So if BIM is the rocket ship, then the ISO is the user manual. So as we've established previously, BIM becomes a very powerful tool, especially when you zoom out and look at the whole picture. Typically, a BIM workflow pretty much always follows this pattern. The client establishes standards. This typically informs the governance of the project. Consultants such as architects, engineers begin authoring, creating 3D models. BIM managers begin to analyze these models, such as running clash detections. And then within the common data environment, a place exists now for gateways, approvals, where model enrichment occurs until it's ready for construction. Then finally at handover, the model is used for asset management. So at a very high level, this is what a typical BIM workflow looks like in a nutshell. However, asset management and the digital twin is its own workflow, and this is separate from what we know as within the common data environment. However, this is a topic for another day. This general workflow is elaborated on in the ISO 19650, where we have the beginnings of a standardized BIM workflow, finally. This diagram summarizes the ISO part 1 and 2. It's a difficult pill to swallow, but we're going to break it down now, and we'll come back to this diagram at the end of this presentation, and hopefully it will all start to make sense. As mentioned earlier, the ISO has two parts. Part 1, concept, and part 2, workflow. Let's start with part 1. Part 1, concepts. A few key concepts tackled in part 1 are defining the stakeholders. This spiderweb diagram shows this relationship. Now let's zoom into a section. We have the client, known as the appointing party, the BIM manager, known as the lead appointed party, and the consultants, architects, and engineers that make up the appointed party. Try to remember these stakeholders, as we will be coming back to them later on. So what other concepts are covered in the ISO Part 1? The ISO Part 1 introduces the concept of the PIM and AIM. So we have the PIM, known as the Project Information Management System, for the design phase, and we have the AIM, known as the Asset Information Management System for the operational phase. If you've read the ISO, then you've likely seen this confusing diagram. But what do all these arrows mean? And how does it all link together? That is where the ISO Part 2 comes in. Part 2, delivery, or as I like to call it, workflow. You'll see this image a lot during this presentation. It's the ISO 19650 Part 2 workflow. We are going to break it down into two parts. The first part is procurement and planning. So, procurement and planning. The workflow is broken down into assessment of needs, invitation to tender, tender response, appointment, and mobilization. Remember those stakeholders? In simple terms, requirements is when the client or appointing party establishes standards and creates the project brief or tender. This brief is sent out for tender to multiple BIM managers, also known as the lead appointed party. These BIM managers respond to the brief by creating their own BIM execution plan. This is then sent back to the client. The client checks the BIM execution plan and appoints the BIM manager if they agree. They award the project and the BIM manager starts the project with his or her team of consultants. So again, these are architects, engineers, and so on that were outlined in their BIM execution plan. So again, this is the first half of the ISO Part 2 in a nutshell. Going back to the diagram, now we're going to talk about the second half, production. This is where the CDE, also known as the Common Data Environment, comes into the picture. In this example, we've used BIM 360 as our common data environment. This section explains the acceptance and review process of models within the common data environment. First, between the consultants and the BIM manager, where the BIM manager reviews and sends back the models to the consultants to edit and enrich as required until the BIM manager has deemed it acceptable. Once accepted, the BIM manager sends the file for approval to the client. The client then receives and sends back or accepts as required. So, in a nutshell, this is the second part of the ISO 19650. Again, these are very simple terms. As you can see, the ISO is really a management process. We call it we at Oricon kind of describe it as a relationship guidebook, because what it essentially is the relationship between the client, the BIM manager, and the varying consultants. So let's summarize. What is BIM? Again, BIM is not Revit. BIM is a concept made of multiple parts. These parts exist to supplement BIM's core ability, that ability being to represent data in 3D space as objects. What is the ISO 19650? The ISO 19650 is a workflow made up of 8 key project stages, the first half of which look at procurement and planning, and the latter half look at production, as explained earlier. Now, looking back at this diagram, I'm hoping it's starting to make a bit more sense. Here it is all together. Hopefully now that we are revisiting it, you have a better understanding of how the ISO relates to the BIM workflow as a whole. Wilson Ong, as a subject matter expert in this field, will surely elaborate on this process and talk about the future of these standards. Thank you for your time, and I hope that gave you a brief and simple way of understanding roughly what the ISO is about and its relationship to architecture and engineering and BIM as a whole.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Arnold Water.
Thank you.
For your insight. Okay, after we listen for Mr. Arnold Water, we move on to our next speaker. First, Mr. Wilson Ong. He is a built environment sector lead at Business Standard Institution, and he is also Master of Engineering from University of Birmingham. So, Mr. Wilson Ong, please welcome. The time is yours now.
Hi everyone, thank you Pak Bayu for the introduction. Thank you Mr. Anwar Lothar for the introduction and the awesome presentation. So now I'll just share my screen. All right, so just to do a short check, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, it's clear.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so hi everyone, good morning. Selamat pagi Pak dan Ibu-Ibu. So first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organizer, Archilantis, and the other co-organizers for arranging this event. And most importantly, I'd like to thank every one of you for spending your Saturday morning with us. And I hope everyone will have a good time. So my name is Wilson Ong, and I am the Built Environmental Sector Lead for the British Standards of Institution. And in case anyone is wondering, I'm based in Malaysia. So before I begin with the subject, I would just like to give you guys a very short background of who is BSI. So as you can see here, BSI, we are basically broken down into 3 different roles. So if you look into the blue section, being the national standards body for the UK, our main purpose is to form standards by facilitating the publishment of best practices. This is done by gathering the best practices of the industry and then seeking consensus before publishing. Once this is published, it's also our job to continue assessing and reviewing these documents to ensure that they stay updated and relevant to the industry. Yes, so for your information, BSI, we are the first world national standards body to actually create standards for the industry. So looking into the middle here, so besides the creation of standards, we also service the industry. So that is our second purposes, which we provide training, assessment, and certification support. This is to make certain that compliance is met to ensure adequate benchmarking based on the best practices for the industry. And besides that, one of our very important role is actually the advisory service, where we will, from time to time, governments will seek help to actually form policies to drive the industry forward. So I think one of the main issues of BIM is basically lack of policies and in certain regions, and that's where BSI comes in to actually instill best practices, to standardize the industry, and to move the industry forward. So besides that also, we have many presence in the globe, where we have offices around 172 countries. And majority of our client is listed in the Fortune 500, FTSE 100, and the Nikkei Index, which makes us a truly global brand. All right, so now let's talk about standards and how our contribution towards the digital construction environment. So one of our goals is to drive the industry towards global environment. This is done through standardization, creation of assessment schemes, and partnership with stakeholders. This partnership approach extends to the full commercial to support our clients, which we leverage with the BSI brand and global footprint to support your supply chain improvement and client acquisition program. So in short, we use standards. Okay, so by having a good knowledge of standards, we actually organize stakeholder committees. After that, it's actually reviewed and actually shaped into a framework, which in our BSI branding we call a kite mark framework, right? So once this framework has been created, we actually will seek the comments and from the stakeholders, and after that, only before publishing, we need to actually seek the consensus of all the relevant industries before we are able to publish the whole scheme. So in short, if this actually aligns any company or any industry, such as Oricon, to be globally aligned, to have a common framework. All right. The next slide, I would just like to give you a very short introduction and a history and a brief overview of the BIM standards. So I believe many of the participants are familiar with the older standards, which is the BS 1192 and the PS 1192. So these standards are actually the full suite of standards which has been adopted by the UK. All right. So when I mentioned adopted by UK, this is actually one of the key successes that why BIM was so successful in the UK. So what did they do? Right. Basically, they mandated the implementation of BIM level 2 in the year 2016 for all of the government projects. So basically, it's a very soft launch, and if you look into this standard, this is actually a government it's a soft landing, where it helps to transit the conventional way into the digital way. So all of the projects that needs to be tendered for by the government requires the company to have a sort of understanding towards BIM level 2. So this results into a huge a greater collaboration between stakeholders and a huge savings for the national projects, as this suite of standards not only take account of the project delivery, but also the whole life cycle of the project, such as asset management, okay, and also security-minded and the health and safety of the whole project using the BIM processes. All right. So this full suite of standards which defines BIM level 2 is now transiting into BIM according to ISO 19650. So as we can see here, for the BS 1192, it has been transited to the ISO 19650 Part 1, which is published at the year 2018. Same goes for the project delivery phase, which is the ISO 19650 Part 2. And in the year 2020, Part 3 and Part 5 has been converted into an ISO standard as well. So for today's webinar, I will just touch base on just the two main standards which I believe is the key for your understanding. Okay, so I believe Mr. Anwar has elaborated this diagram. Okay, so this is actually the key, the essence of the understanding of the project delivery phase, where it involves the procurement, the project information model, the asset information model. Yes. Yeah. So I will dive deeper into the workflow right now. All right. So as you can see here, this is one of the sample workflow that you can get it publicly available in the internet. Okay, so this workflow is actually organized in a swim lane diagram, where it sorts the appointing party towards here, lead appointed party, and the appointed party. All right. So and if you look into on the left row, the left column, each row has a different task, where I think Mr. Anwar also sort of explained the different numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that I will just go through quickly. All right. All right. So once the project needs has been established, so looking into here, this is what is actually required to by the best practices to have a proper workflow. Once the project needs are established, then only an invitation will take place through the publishing of the EIR to allow bidders to understand the scale of the following BIM project. Right. So the first thing that we all need to do is to actually understand what do we need in a BIM project. Very often I see BIM projects where they will just specify, I need BIM in my project, but they do not specify in detail what do they like all of the details, example, what is the level of debt and so on. That's why it's very important for this to all the needs has to be assessed in order for you to understand the end. So what this ISO actually is teaching us is to begin with the end in mind, right? So in the standards, you will come across terms like project information requirement, where it was understood as a plain language question, where it guides you on asking all of the right questions between the stakeholders and what the project needs in order to establish the groundwork. After that, before the invitation of tender, a document such as the exchange information requirement is needed to invite the tenders for bidding. All right. Then after that, after the publishing of the EIR, the lead appointed party and the appointed party needs to reply the EIR or the exchange information requirement with a pre-appointment BIM execution plan. Okay, so this is the whole idea of this is to commit to all of the specific requirements which has been listed down by the appointing party. So that way, both parties will have a common understanding and will reduce the amount of disputes in future. All right. So once the appointing party has deployed this stakeholder or appointed this party, the next step is to work on the final details. All right, so as you can see here, after the selection, it goes down to the appointment. All right, so the next step is to work on the pre-BP to produce a post-appointment BIM execution plan. Okay, so forgive me if I'm sharing all of these jargons, but this is all of the concepts and principles of the ISO, which it will greatly improve the communication between stakeholders. Right. So during the post-appointment BIM execution plan, the stakeholders are required to detail the mobilization plan, the information, the production of information, and the delivery of the model. All right. So this is all of this. It needs to be well defined before the start of any project. All right. Then, if you look into this section. So once all of this is done, there's actually several checking processes which takes place. There are various levels of approval. So this is to make sure that everything is actually done right before you even start to build the building, right? So in other words, sometimes I do hear in the industry quite often, you're actually creating this information twice. Okay, so I mean, you are building the building twice. First, you are creating the right information, and you gets approved. Okay, then you work on a 3D model. Then only you build the physical building. So that way, it will greatly reduce the like any dispute, or if let's say there's any design flaw, it can be rectified immediately. All right. So in short, this is a very standardized workflow, a very simplified workflow, which all of the stakeholders can get aligned to. Okay, so as we know in the construction industry, our construction industry is very fragmented. Okay? Everyone's working in silos. Everyone has their own way of working, which cause many problems in terms of collaboration. And by having a standardized workflow, it will help to gel everyone together at a certain level. So what this standard actually does is creating a base for collaboration. All right, so I'll just share with you some of the simple terms that I explained earlier, just to recap. So you will come across terms like PIR, which stands for Project Information Requirement. So these are the questions you need to ask before the start of any project, during the start of the BIM project. Ask all the right questions. What is your needs? What do you want? So basically, you also have to, by asking so, you are also able to allocate the right amount of budget. Okay. So once these questions are established, once these needs are established, then we will the processes actually dictates for you to work on a formal document such as the EIR, which is the Exchange Information Requirement. All right, and then followed by the pre-BEP and post-BEP. So one of the commonly asked questions, why is there a pre-BEP and post-BEP? So if you look into any of the, I think everyone has worked on a BEP before. So a BEP can be very, very hefty because it outlines all of the mobilization plan, the full deployment. So that doesn't make sense for the tender. So that's why the ISO dictates terms like the pre-appointment BEP. So basically, this is a very watered down version just for tender, right? And along the way, you will come across terms like the Master Information Delivery Plan, which actually sort out all of the tasks that that's needed in order to deliver all of the right information. Okay, all of the milestones and so on, just to make sure that all of the project information model is completed. And also, of course, one of the main things that you hear in the BIM processes is the Common Data Environment, short form for CDE. All right. So in the CDE, so there's a very specific process where it's separated into four different areas, which is the work in progress, the shared and publish and archive. So I will not go too much in depth in that, but later in the slide, in the presentation, I will share with you some useful reference where you can refer that for more of your information. Right, so this is for the ISO 19650 Part 2 project delivery phase. And now I will move on into the ISO 19650 Part 3. Right. So as we all know, the usage of BIM is not only about the project delivery phase, but also the operational phase. The framework of ISO 19650 Part 3 has outlined examples of 3 possible scenarios so that the asset information models are up to date in an orderly fashion. So as you can see here, pathway B and C are very similar. So very similar to what I've presented earlier, which is the project delivery phase. And I think Mr. Anwar did share in his slide also. So these are very similar terms. You see, even without me coordinating with Mr. Anwar, we are already speaking the same language. So that is how powerful a standard is. Right. So so the difference between pathway B and pathway C are very similar to the project information delivery. Okay, but pathway B has a trigger event over here, okay, which starts after the mobilization. Okay, whereas for pathway C, it starts during the beginning. Okay, so what this actually plots is all of the 3 very basic common scenarios. Okay, so for example, you really have a very useful information model. Okay, to build the building, you manage to save a lot of cost, save time, and so on. Okay, and after, as we all know, after the project information model, it is converted into the asset information model. And what happens if you do not maintain the asset information model? Yeah, so if you don't maintain that, automatically it will become less useful. Okay, so this ISO 19650 Part 3 actually guides you to identify terms like such as the trigger events, so that you will know what to do. Example, if let's say you have any minor maintenance or minor renovation, such as the pathway B, which is the green color box, okay, which says that if let's say there's any minor one, you just have to update the model accordingly. Whereas if let's say if you have any major works or major renovation or major extension, you need to start off with the process before so you have to go through the whole project delivery phase again, right? And the very third unique path, which I strongly not recommend, but they do outline in the ISO as well, which is pathway D. Okay, so certain times we have to acquire older assets which do not have any information model, right? So what do we do about it? right? So often we will maybe do a laser scanning, such as a LiDAR scanner, okay? And from there, we will plot off the necessary information and we will update the information model, okay? So what this does is actually give you a very brief concept of what to do after you have all the information model. And so it also guides you on how you can convert it into an information model of the relevant assets. Right, so this is a very watered down version of the part 3. As promised, I will share with you a very useful link, a very useful website that you can actually get bite-sized information of what has been shared today, right? So if you look into this, this website, which you just search for UK BIM framework, this is actually co-organized by BSI. Okay, you will get very many useful literatures for the part 2, part 3, part 1, until I believe it's until the part 6. Part 6 is not really fully completed yet because it's still quite new. Yeah, and so we even have useful information if, let's say, if anybody wants to already understands the PS 1192 part 3 and wants to convert it into the ISO 19650 part 3. Right, so if you want to know more, you can just have a look into this. All right, so in short, why standardized workflow? So I did mention also, we are using common terms right now. So automatically, if somebody who knows the ISO, okay, and I know the ISO, automatically we can gel. We already sort of, we have greatly reduced the learning curve. All right, and most importantly, having a standardized process, having a well-documented process makes this auditable. What do I mean by auditable? Auditable means it can be reviewed, it can be checked, and it can be improved. So that's why it comes with continuous improvement. Okay. As we know, BIM is just not only about the technology, but also mainly on the process. Okay. Technology will be replaced from time to time, but the process will be there. I mean, the framework has to be there. So if any of the technology change, you can actually use the existing workflow or existing procedures and you can alter it. So that's what I mean by auditable and continuous improvement. Okay, so this actually makes you very adaptive to the, let's say there's any new software or new technology, you can adapt to it very quickly. So that's the whole idea of a standardized workflow, and you are getting in line with the international standard as well. All right. So now the question is, what is BSI doing to encourage, to drive the digital construction industry? Okay. So a couple of things that we are doing is to actually create awareness of the standardized framework and also engagement of specifiers. So one example that I can share with you is the road transport authorities, who is the government of the UAE. So basically what they do, they actually governs all of the rules and actually owns all of the infrastructure assets, such as the highways, the underground tunnels, the railways, and so on. Okay. By adopting this standard, then they adopted it quite quickly. I think on the year 2018, right? They saw a very huge savings on their projects, and even like those complicated projects, by having all of these framework, they can actually select stakeholders much better and getting everyone in line very quickly. Okay. So specifiers such as RTA will work with the main contractors who already has an understanding of the ISO, followed by the supply chain. And we at BSI support this by offering various types of certification. Right. And just to share with you a couple of countries which adopted the ISO 19650. Okay, so of course the UK, because UK the BIM standards basically is originated from the UK and converted to ISO and ISO. Okay. Of course, Australia, Belgium, China, Germany, and most importantly, Indonesia. Yeah. All right. So these are the few big companies that has been certified by for the ISO 19650. So I did mention about RTA, and I'd just like to share with you a very short story of the first certified client in Indonesia. So if you look into here, Adhikarya, I think everyone is familiar with Adhikarya, and hopefully you guys are around here as well. Yeah. So they are actually the first certified client for Indonesia to adopt the ISO 19650. Right. They actually contacted me, I think, like a year ago, and we were very keen into training, but unfortunately, after a year later only, we were certified. But nevertheless, they are still the first company who is certified for the 19650. Right. Right. So for the next slide, I would like to share with you the bigger picture of the digital construction. Okay. So I always will tell people, BIM is just a very, very small part of the Industrial Revolution 4.0 towards the construction industry. It's also the foundation of how information is gathered, right? All of the information gathered. And what BSI we hope to achieve is to have a smart city strategy. So just for information, we do have a framework such as the ISO 37106, which detects the measuring tools, all the indicators of a smart city. Okay, and moving down towards the pyramid, when we talk about information, security is always very, very important, right? So same goes for the security of Internet of Things and so on, right? So this is the bigger picture, and that is our vision of BSI to transform the built environment into the digital age. All right. So, so just to share with you, so I think I did share with you some bite-sized information for the link as well for the website. We at BSI, so if you like to know more about standards also, we do offer a couple of public trainings, and we have newly launched our BIM qualification program. So what this means is anybody who wish to certify themselves, because often in the industry when people say they are an expert in BIM, but if let's say you look into it, yes, they are an expert, but just into certain aspects, and most of the people they are just it's just on the modeling part. All right, but what we are offering is actually the whole bigger picture, the whole ISO, and this logo. So either you can go for the asset pathway or the project pathway. This logo can be used for your personal qualification. What I mean by personal qualification, maybe your name cards, your CV, and so on. Yeah. Right. Just to share with you a bit more about this personal qualification, it involves a series of courses where exam is needed to be taken in order to be qualified. Okay. So we have the first level of qualification, which is the practitioner and the professional. And we are currently working on the certified professional, which actually showcase all of your, how can you actually demonstrate all of the knowledge you learn to apply it to your project, right? So I think as a good view, we at BSI also are offering training vouchers as part of our plan to further create awareness of the ISO to everyone. Right. So if for the 10 people who ask the 10 best questions, we'll have a training voucher worth of 1 juta Indonesian rupee. Right. And on top of that, to make the deal even sweeter, we are offering a 10% discount for any of the kite mark certification. So what you got to do is just present your e-certificate after this, once you get this e-certificate after this webinar, present it to our sales office in Indonesia, and we will acknowledge this 10%. Right, so this is the end of my presentation. Yeah, So thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, for your slide and explanation. Wow, this is a good offer, yeah. You can give the audience a discount, and then you give more 10% discount, yeah, after you give the voucher, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very good. Okay, before we move to Q&A session, please fill out the poll question. They are around on the computer screen. Sorry, Mr. Hanu, there is any polling question? I forgot for the last session before. Oke, buat teman-teman silakan diisi quick poll dari kita. Mungkin di beberapa pertanyaan nanti next di sesi Q&A kita akan ada polling seperti ini. Oke, sambil teman-teman ngisi. Oke, and now to the question and answer part of this webinar. As a reminder, please attendee participate in Q&A. Oke, sudah beberapa sudah berpartisipasi di Q&A. Just click the raise hand for the session, and the host will select the one of the participant and give the question directly to speaker, or just type your question into the Q&A text box. Don't forget to mention which speaker your question is for. So untuk pertanyaan hari ini, teman-teman bisa bertanyakan dengan bahasa Indonesia, kita bisa bantu untuk translate ke bahasa Inggris. Untuk pertanyaan yang terbaik kita akan berikan tadi selain dari penawaran dari Mr. Wilson, kita akan plus lagi yang terbaik dari kita pilih ini, 10 pertanyaan yang terbaik kita akan pilih, akan mendapatkan voucher itu plus free membership sampai dengan Desember 2021 dari Archilantis. Oke. Teman-teman bisa mulai dari sekarang untuk bisa menggunakan raise hand button-nya untuk bisa menanyakan langsung ke Mr. Ong atau Wilson Ong atau kepada Mr. Anwar Lauter. Oke. Silakan. Bila ingin bertanya, ditunggu. Oh, maybe sambil kita menunggu Mr. Wilson, there is a question for you.
Yes, sure.
Q&A chat. He is talking about, hello, Pak Wilson. BEP is a living document, correct? Can MIDP start parallel with BEP, or it should waiting the final BEP?
Okay, for the MIDP, it's not recommended to start during the pre-appointment BEP. Because what the pre-appointment BEP does is just basically addressing the EIR. Okay, so but ultimately all of these processes it will be dictated by the appointing party. But according to the ISO, the MIDP doesn't have to be too detailed, or probably you can it doesn't have to be too detailed. So it have to be in full, because also I believe there will be a lot of information you might be lacking in order to start the MIDP. Okay, yeah. So if you look into the full MIDP, it can be stacks of pages, very, very comprehensive, which determines all of the milestones, all of the deliverables, and so on. Yeah, but ultimately also, I'm sorry to actually go both ways. It also the final decision still lies into the appointing party. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I think it's good answer. Maybe Mr. Raman, mungkin pertanyaan sudah cukup menjawab. Mungkin kita langsung ke selanjutnya. Maybe it's good question for Mr. Anwar. Are you there, Mr. Anwar? Hello.
Yes.
Maybe it came from Muhammad Yusuf. He said in bahasa, apakah ada batasan untuk ISO 1965 antara consultant and contractor? Yeah, there is any border for ISO between consultant, contractor, and the owner? What do you think about that?
Sorry, was there any border, was it?
Yeah, border border for the consultant, contractor, and the owner in ISO 19650.
Yeah, so something that Wilson mentioned, which is really important, is it kind of always comes down to the requirements. So the client will always set the requirements, and then it's a matter of how it's interpreted. I worked on projects where you know, the design, it's what's called design and construct. So the contractor is also in charge of the design, and then you have projects where the designer takes care of the BIM management separate from the contractor. So I think that relationship is kind of, it depends on the owner, but initially the two common cases are they aren't related, and design is separate to construction, or they are, and then they are linked, and you have design and construct. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, maybe I can add on a bit more also. All right, I think the question actually asked about the challenges of the ISO 9650.
Yeah.
So I think I will answer the question very short. Okay, the whole idea of the ISO 9650 is to break these borders, break this challenge between consultants, contractors, and owners. That is the whole main purpose, to actually encourage collaboration, right? So but definitely there will be borders, but that is the whole purpose of the ISO, to encourage all of this collaboration. So if all of these consultants, contractors actually picks this up, there will be less challenges. Yeah, so that is what I can say. All right.
It's good. It's good answer. More directly and more clearly. Okay, maybe the next question is. Oke, teman-teman, tidak ada yang raise hand, yang bisa bertanya langsung langsung kepada ini, kepada narasumber atau panelis. Atau kalau masih belum ada, saya coba yang di sini ya, yang di Q&A dulu. Oke, maybe I will wait. Mr. Haryono, okay, Mr. Raymond is done. Okay, maybe this is for you, Mr. Wilson. This is from Anjar Primasetra. He is asked about, there is for an ISO 19650 is there is a talking about specifically about building energy or building material for your standard, and then what is the strategy for the BIM stakeholder for BIM stakeholder to implement that their BIM in to what we call to be implemented into all region in Indonesia. Can you give us some strategy? What the good strategy for this part?
Okay, all right. So I'll just address the first question first. So I just will paraphrase in my understanding of the first question.
Yeah.
The first question is asking about energy management for building, and also energy for materials. So I believe this is relation to green building. Okay, right? It could be green building. So in my region, we call green building actually the sixth dimension. Okay, but maybe your region it might be different. Okay, there is no specific standard for all of this, but if you have a better understanding of the ISO, okay, what me and Mr. Anwar have spoke about is basically a common framework. Okay, so if you have a common framework and common procedures, automatically you can actually add this all into the PIR, the project information requirement. Okay, so let's say if you want to take account of the energy management of this project, so what you got to do, you got to actually address it during the start of the project. Do not get the data during the end of the project, because what you're doing is actually really troubling yourself, because you got to backtrack and get all this. So why not, when the building is under construction, all of this data can be obtained. So you can actually get all of this using the ISO 9650 framework, okay, by adding it into one of the requirements during the start. Okay, so that is how that is how my view. Okay, for the second question, what is the strategy for the stakeholders for BIM implementation in Indonesia? Okay, so I think I did share a few of the useful links, okay, where you can actually just so before you buy the standard, because I understand the standard could be very expensive also, or the other way you can actually refer to the older standard, which actually is still very similar, but you can get it free, the older standard. Okay, or the best way is to actually attend our BSI course. Yeah, so that will actually teach you on the concepts and principles. We will share best practices, and furthermore, it will give you a huge credibility through our BIM qualification badge. Yeah, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Oke, mungkin sebelum kita ke pertanyaan selanjutnya, Mas Hanu mungkin ada lagi full question lagi yang bisa ditampilkan. Oke, sambil menunggu pertanyaan selanjutnya, saya mungkin teman-teman bisa isi quick poll di sebelah atas ini. Oke, maybe this is for you, Mr. Anwar Lotter, from Mr. Tigor Pasaribu. Hello, Mr. Anwar. Yeah. He asking about, do you have an experience to how do the BIM engineer estimate and efficiency the bridge construction? Do you have some experience for that?
Yeah. So, again, I'm gonna paraphrase this question so I don't get it wrong. Are you asking about the a BIM implementation process associated with bridge construction? Is that the question?
Yeah, he asking about how to make an estimate and efficiency estimate.
Okay.
I think.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think initially, if you're deciding whether or not to implement BIM, I think what it comes down to is the breadth of the project. If it's very large, then very much BIM is required. If it's a small bridge, depending on the budget, perhaps it's not. So I think for things like bridge, BIM is mandatory, I think, because you don't want to make any mistakes. And essentially what you're doing is not making any mistakes, not only on the construction side of things, but also from a liability perspective with regards to the client. So, there's governance in place and everyone knows their roles. So I think, to answer the question in short, it's very important to include it when you're constructing something like a bridge.
Yeah, it's okay. I think this is clearly answered too. Maybe this is the following answer too for you from Mr. Abdul Haris. He is asking about, is it possible for him to implement BIM with ongoing project? So there is a going project, and then he asked can we implement BIM with project still ongoing? What do you think about this, Mr. Anwar?
Yeah, it's like Wilson said, there's nothing more important than starting early on a lot of things and defining requirements. So look, it's not great because you're going to have to connect the dots. Is it possible? Definitely. But ideally, you want to approach things holistically from the start so that you can, you can connect the dots towards the end. Things like, for example, Kobe, which is an asset management requirement. People often, fill in the blanks towards the end, but things like that are so important at the beginning of the project. So, yeah, it can be done. Suggested to start from the beginning.
Yeah, you're right. You must make a goal first. Yeah, you cannot directly parallelly make a BIM project with the ongoing project. Okay, maybe before we ask several questions again, there is Mr. Hanung. There is any poll for the last quick poll for today? Oke, ini poll terakhir dari kita sebelum kita lanjut ke pertanyaan selanjutnya. Oke, mungkin saya akan coba cari lagi. Ada yang bertanya lagi.
Ada yang resen, Pak Bayu.
Oh, resen. Oke, ada yang resen? Kok saya nggak kelihatan ya? Sebentar. Oke, mana? Oke. Gimana cara angkatnya? Sebentar. Hello.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I answer what underline the BIM ISO that was described to Apple in Indonesian in this regulate.
Sorry, before you asking, can you introduce yourself first, Mr. Abdul Salim? Can you introduce first?
Thank you. My name is Tri. Maybe now I answer what the underline the BIM ISO that was described to Apple in Indonesian is this regulate.
Oh, maybe you think what is the uh, related about the Indonesian government regulation with the ISO? Is that your question?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, maybe it's perfect for Mr. Wilson Ong. Can you answer for this, Mr. Wilson?
Okay, so sorry, the question is what about the ISO? Sorry, can you repeat one more time?
Maybe he asking about it was in what you think in the government regulation that directly
Okay.
with
All
the
right.
ISO.
Okay, so this is the same problem we are facing for also in Malaysia. Okay, I think in many other countries as well. Okay, so I think I did describe the history of the standards. So the whole idea of me doing that, because I want you to understand the background of how the origins. It's very important for us to understand the foundation before we actually move forward. All right. So the BS standards, the PS standards, basically they are originated from the UK. All right. So for UK, even such as the file name conventions, they actually really have established all of these. The stage of works and all of this they have established. So the ISO is it's the high level document where actually aligns all of the stakeholders together, not only in the national level but globally. Okay, so one of the problems that I face in Malaysia is there are still some gaps in the ISO. Okay, so such as maybe I mentioned about the file naming convention, how we actually name a file in the national level. Okay, how do we actually define the stage of work in the national level? Okay, so what the first initiative and I will see the most important gap of any country is to create a national annex. Okay, so if anyone doesn't know what is national annex, look into the BSEN ISO 19650. Okay, it is different from just the ISO 19650. Okay, so this BSEN actually has a national annex on the back page of the part 2, which defines all of the gaps. Okay, so in Malaysia, what I'm working very hard is actually to push for the national annex. And also I heard news in Hong Kong where they are now currently developing a national annex for Hong Kong to actually fill in all of the gaps of the ISO. Okay, but just to share with you, a national annex do not just comes out overnight. It has to get all the stakeholders to sit down, okay, to contribute. And the most difficult part is to get everyone to agree. Yeah, so I think everyone in the project also, even how do you actually name your model, there will be a huge argument. Yeah, so this is one of the main gaps, the national annex. Okay, I believe that is the most important thing that a government can do to actually create this policy to drive the national BIM agenda. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Song. We hopefully like that because within government and ISO maybe have a related argument for that, and we believe this is good for our industry. Okay, maybe the next question is from wait. Maybe it's good for Mr. Anwar, maybe I think. From Mr. Junata Chandra Gunawan Lim, Mr. Anwar. He asked about how much money for a company to apply BIM from software, certification, hardware, training, etc. Do you have any suggestion for this?
Wow, I mean, so the question is, how much? So what is the cost for
Yeah, what is
company?
cost? I think that is cost. Yeah.
Sure. And is that a company that wants to perform BIM or a company that wants to build something and utilize a consultant in BIM?
Yeah, because it's the issue is Indonesia. You think many tender for new project is always said is must usually a BIM
Yep.
for their workflow. So the issue is the how to originally contractor that not use BIM, they want to move out to BIM. They always talking about
Sure.
investing.
How much does BIM cost? Is
Yes.
the kind of underlying question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Wilson made a good point. You know, it depends on the maturity of the country and its approach to BIM. Often there will be an almost underlying price, which is a similar price to some degree to a kind of engineering consultancy. So yeah, I think it depends how much it is within Indonesia. I do believe that it is quite substantial though, because there's a lot of liability involved with being a BIM consultant, because you're responsible for a lot of things. So you do play a liability role as well. To put a figure on it, I wouldn't know. I apologize.
Okay, maybe I will answer in bahasa first. Also to Mr. Junata Chandra Gunawan Lim, mungkin gini Bapak. Jadi tujuan yang dimaksud oleh Mr. Anwar itu lebih kepada baik lagi kepada cost dari proyek Bapak itu sendiri, berapa besar itu proyeknya seperti apa, karena kan sudah pasti setiap proyek itu punya penyisihan dana untuk hal-hal seperti ini. Dan baik lagi ketika Bapak tidak tahu fungsi dan manfaat dari software itu sendiri, dari hardware juga nggak tahu fungsi dan manfaatnya, pasti akan berpikiran semua itu akan menjadi mahal. Karena bicara mahal dan murah itu relatif ya, karena tergantung dari investasi yang Bapak ambil, setelah itu apa yang Bapak dapat gitu kan. Ketika Bapak membuat investasi itu mahal-mahal dan Bapak tidak mendapatkan manfaatnya, itu pasti akan terasa sangat mahal sekali gitu. Jadi seperti itu sih. Jadi intinya harus compare di antara dua tujuan ini, dari mulainya sampai kepada goal-nya itu sendiri. Mungkin untuk Bapak Junata Chandra Gunawan ini cukup menjawab seperti itu. Oke, maybe sudah hampir jam 11 lebih. Saya coba di 2 pertanyaan lagi. Mungkin ada yang mau resen. Oke, Bapak Deden Irawan. Oke, silakan Bapak Deden. Bisa ini. Oke, ada lagi yang resen. Bapak Deden, silakan untuk answer. Saya sudah coba. Oke. Mas Hanung bisa bantu saya ini gimana ya? Untuk ini saya sudah coba.
Sudah bisa untuk talking, tapi sepertinya Pak Deden
mute ya.
Respon.
Oke, maybe for sebenarnya kita ini dulu ya. Kita lanjut dulu. Mungkin langsung ini Pak Junata Chandra Gunawan Lim. Silakan Bapak Junata.
Ya, terima kasih Pak.
Baik Pak. Boleh perkenalkan diri dulu Pak, silakan.
Ya, nama saya Junata Chandra Gunawan Lim.
Iya Pak.
Ini videonya nggak bisa saya hidupkan, nggak tahu caranya.
Baik,
saya
Pak.
dari Surabaya, perusahaan
Baik,
saya
Pak.
bergerak di konsultan. Saya memang tertarik dengan BIM. Sudah lama saya kepingin menerapkan, tetapi memang masalahnya di Indonesia ini kan memang pembiayaan. Project fee-nya juga kan seperti itu, tapi saya tetap optimis bahwa saya bila ada kesempatan saya akan menerapkan BIM ini. Nah, untuk itu kan saya perlu tahu berapa besar biayanya ketika saya mendapatkan satu proyek yang signifikan untuk bisa saya aplikasikan. Saya sudah tahu dan harus kemana saya menghubungi. Begitu Pak. Time frame-nya, pembiayaannya, apa saja yang harus disiapkan.
Baik, Pak.
Ketika ada yang signifikan, saya bisa langsung menghubungi. Begitu, Pak.
Baik, Pak. Baik, Pak. Terima kasih banyak, Pak.
Ya,
Saya coba langsung
sama-sama.
jawab. Saya coba langsung jawab live langsung, Pak Jonathan Gunawan. Jadi gini, Pak, untuk kebutuhan Bapak itu, Bapak bisa langsung kontak kita dari archilantis.com. Bapak bisa search di sana, archilantis.com untuk menghubungi kita langsung. Nanti situ ada semua berbagai menu dan berbagai kebutuhan akan apa untuk kebutuhan BIM dan termasuk sertifikasinya juga ada kontaknya untuk dari BSI juga ada. Nanti Bapak bisa kontak di sana juga. Nanti kita akan bantu sejauh mana kebutuhan BIM Bapak termasuk dalam konsultan tuh, termasuk dalam goal-nya dan sebagainya. Nanti kita coba akan bantu untuk penulisan lebih lanjut. Mungkin itu cukup membantu, Pak. Nanti kita akan coba directly ya. Nanti kita bisa chat di belakang untuk kebutuhan Bapak ini lebih lanjut sehingga Bapak jelas di kebutuhan tender dan sebagainya. Begitu sih, Pak.
Oke, Pak. Terima kasih banyak, Pak.
Baik, Bapak. Terima kasih, Bapak. Mungkin next, Bapak Thompson Prakarsa. Boleh unmute mic-nya, silakan. Halo, Mr. Thompson Prakarsa. Halo. Halo, Bapak Thompson? Oh, mungkin tidak ini ya. Halo. Oke. Mungkin ada masalah, Mas Hanu? Oke, ada lagi pertanyaan yang ingin bertanya langsung. Bertanya langsung kepada panelis, atau mungkin kalau sudah selesai saya akan akhiri saja. Okay, maybe for now, for the Q&A session is ended. Thank you very much. Okay, that's all the time we have for the question today. Thank you. We appreciate your time and expertise on today's topics, as well as to everyone and the audience. We appreciate for your attention and participation. Ladies and gentlemen, now let's move on to our conclusion about this webinar. I will summarize, or maybe Mr. Wilson and Mr. Anwar Lothar, you have any closing statement for topic today? Well, who first, Mr. Anwar or Mr. Wilson, who will make some closing statement?
I'll just say very briefly. I think so. It's such an honor to be involved in this. I think to get in early with regards to Indonesia's kind of maturity towards the BIM and construction in general, I think it's very important. I think perhaps in several years to a decade from now, Indonesia will be a very strong place, and as a result, to have a strong kind of backbone in construction and infrastructure, I think is very important. So it's an absolute honor to be able to talk to you and everyone here. And yeah, not to sound cheesy, I really miss and love Indonesia so much. And again, it's been so great to speak with Wilson, who's a wealth of knowledge. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for addressing me. Yeah, it's such an honor to actually meet you and to work with you. Yeah, so I think without even talking to each other, automatically we do have something in common, which is the ISO standards. So automatically we really spoken the same language. I believe it's very difficult for you as well during this time of the pandemic where you are unable to travel back home. Yeah, I'm also very impressed with I would like to thank the organizers for organizing this wonderful event. Yeah, it's very responsive. I believe that the participants too has gathered a lot of very, very useful information. Wow, it's very easy to understand. And also, I'm very impressed of the uptake of the ISO standards and the drive towards the digital construction. Yeah, I hope to see more, and I hope to hear more from the Indonesian market. And I hope that my contribution here has made some sort of changes. So I did mention about the national annex. Yeah, so hopefully somebody will actually do something about it. Yeah, because that's one of the main issues for the implementation. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Anwar and Mr. Wilson. Maybe sekarang mungkin dari Ibu Nolia ada yang ingin disampaikan yang mengenai tadi tuh ya, 10 pemenang Ibu Nolia apa gimana? Termasuk dengan free membership dari Archilantis.
Boleh Pak
Iya,
Bayu.
silakan Ibu.
Oke, baik.
Ya.
Dari saya, wah lega bisa bahasa Indonesia lagi ya Pak. Setelah dari tadi kita ngomongnya bahasa Inggris. Baik, terima kasih banyak Bapak dan Ibu, baik tim penyelenggara, kemudian juga para partisipan buat waktunya untuk bisa hari ini kita berdiskusi sangat produktif ya, walaupun 1,5 jam, tapi kita bisa ada insight baru mengenai BIM. Nah, tadi saya, kemudian Pak Bayu, kemudian dari tim Pamerindo sudah berdiskusi, kita akan memberikan 10, Pak, actualnya kita 10 best questions, nanti kita akan berikan yang pertama itu adalah voucher training dari BSI, terus kemudian kalau organisasinya mau certified BIM, kita akan berikan diskon 10%, 10% diskon. Kemudian dari Archilantis juga free membership ya, Pak Bayu ya?
Betul Bu, sudah diskon 1 juta ditambah 10% free membership. Oh, menarik banget.
Oh gitu. Dan free membership juga. Tapi karena tadi pertanyaannya bagus-bagus semua Pak Bayu, maka kita putuskan oke, kita akan pilih 11 Pak instead of 10, jadi kita kasih 11.
Tambah satu ya. Oke.
Tambah satu. Karena tadi pertanyaannya menarik sekali ya. Jadi mungkin kita akan langsung saja ya Pak Bayu ya.
Boleh,
kita
silakan
akan share. Bisa minta tolong Mbak Erlin di share. Ini adalah nama-nama dari pemenang untuk pertanyaan Pak yang top 11 berarti ya Pak ya.
Top 11.
Okay. Top 11. Sebentar.
11. Satu lagi.
Sebentar.
Ya, udah confirm Bu, tinggal di share aja.
Oke. Tinggal di share, nanti pada saat ditampilkan gimana cara mengklaimnya gitu ya Pak ya. Nanti di situ ada alamat email, kemudian juga ada nomor handphone, bisa kita chat ataupun Bapak kirimkan email ya Pak ya. Nanti tinggal kontak saja, nanti kita akan berikan rewardnya. Gitu ya Pak ya.
Saya juga minta kontaknya juga Bu ya. Buat
iya. Bapak mau voucher diskon juga ya Pak ya?
Oh, bukan, kontaknya dulu, kok voucher nanti Bu.
Baik, ini
ini dia.
Ya, ini dia
11.
Pak. 11
11
winner yang akan kita eligible untuk memperoleh training voucher diskon 1 juta Pak. Kemudian nanti kalau company-nya mau certified kita bisa kasih diskon 10% dan free membership dari Archilantis. Betul ya Pak Bayu ya?
Betul sekali Bu.
Ya. Oke. Saya bacakan 1 sampai 5, Bapak 6 sampai 11 ya Pak ya?
Boleh Bu.
Oke, yang pertama Bapak Daniel Fischer. Mudah-mudahan Pak Daniel masih ada di sini ya. Kemudian Pak Ahmad Maulana, Pak Haryono Suryono, kemudian Pak Sahlan Zuliansyah, kemudian Pak Remon Saputra. Silakan Pak Bayu.
Saya lanjut, nomor 6 Bapak Muhammad Yusuf, nomor 7 Bapak Anjar Prima Setra, 8 Bapak Tigor Pasaribu, selanjutnya nomor 9 Bapak Abdul Haris, nomor 10 nih emang saya agak ini ya, saya ingat di chat aja tuh Bapak mungkin Abdul Salim aja ya namanya. Iya, nomor 11 Bapak Pandu Darmata. Oke, ditunggu ya kontaknya langsung ya.
Bisa kontak Pak di screen, bisa difoto ya di screen ini, nanti bisa kontak setelah ini. Oke. Baik, terima kasih Pak Bayu.
Sama-sama. Iya, terima kasih semuanya. Oke, it's time for me and team for leaving. Apologize for the shortcoming while hosting this webinar. And the next, I will hand it back to the MC. Silakan, Mbak Rachel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Harbayu, for guiding this Weekend BIM Talk Series 6. And thank you to all the speakers, Mr. Wilson Ong and Mr. Anwan Lothar, who gave an extraordinary presentation to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, visit the country's premier events for concrete and construction industry, Construction Indonesia and Concrete Show Southeast Asia. This year, Construction Indonesia and Concrete Show Southeast Asia will be presented in a hybrid format, which provides opportunities for exhibitors to engage with their on-site live event, buyers as well as generate new business leads through the online virtual show. It allows exhibitors who are unable to travel to still participate in the live exhibition and at the same time connect with their buyers digitally. Construction Indonesia and Concrete Show Southeast Asia are part of Indonesia Energy and Engineering Series, the largest gathering in energy and engineering sector in the country. See you all physically and virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to close today's webinar. For those of you who want to rewatch the webinar, we will send webinar materials and recordings to your email. I am Rachel Pardede, Pamerindo and Archilantis asks for leave. Thank you for your time and see you on the next hour talk series. Have a weekend.
Thank you all.
Terima kasih semuanya. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Semuanya.
Ibu Nolia, Mr.
Thank
Anwar,
you.
Mr. Wilson, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak.
After this, we're gonna have a photo session, yeah?
Okay.
Almost leave.
BSI is the UK's national standards body, and we take a really keen interest in how we can use consensus knowledge to accelerate innovation.
BSI is the world's oldest national standards body, and it's fair to say for about the last 100 years now, we've been at the forefront of innovation.
And it's particularly important in the built environment space, where we've seen radical new developments that are transforming the industry, like building information modelling, what we call BIM. These new BIM standards that are coming in today for use in the UK and internationally are really going to be transformational in the way that we deliver infrastructure, buildings, and other construction projects.
We've worked with the industry. We've taken the standards that were created by the national standards body. We've worked with the industry, we've worked with key stakeholders, and we've brought together a scheme that reflects not only the best practice that was available in the standard, but also, more importantly, what the industry needed.
We've been working hard with government and their advisors and our industry experts to develop a suite of BIM standards in this case. And they're there to be used. They're freely available, so make use of them, download. But they're basically, this is what good looks like.
Lifetime efficiency is an even bigger cost than the initial construction. So there's no doubt that that too is going to play a major part in our focus in the coming years as we partner with the industry.
It's been absolutely key to the products that we've been developing to support the construction industry globally with implementation of BIM. BIM represents, a real shift in innovation and how construction is undertaken. So it's been very, very important to work with industry to engineer solutions together. Very important when you consider that collaboration really is the foundation for BIM.
It's time to unlock the true potential of BIM with Planoly. Your plan module provides a simple framework to create BIM execution plans, implementation plans, and contract agreements. Drag and drop from industry templates or copy and paste your own to standardize across your projects. Build your documents together with live editing. Add text, images, tables, videos, or even embed rich content to a section to enhance your plan and drive team engagement. Collaborate with your team to progress each section by commenting, sharing, and publishing content that has been authorized for use. Simple online project planning. And remember, don't plan late. Plan early. Planoly.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we take photo.
Please open the camera. We will have a photo session. Jangan lupa make up-nya, make up.
Biasa ya Bu, cewek-cewek.
Mungkin sisir-sisir dulu.
Oke, sebentar.
Menit ya, 5 menit.
Erlin mau lipstikan ya?
Sudah semua? Sudah semua, bisa langsung take foto kita?
Mungkin tunggu Bu Erlin.
Erlin ya.
Udah. Oh, sorry.